Okay. March 10th, EDIC non-quorumed unofficial meeting. We're still going to have a discussion. We won't make any decisions. So we don't have quorums, so I still want to talk over here. So first thing, did you want to say anything, John, for public speak? Are you here to listen?
Oh yeah, one thing, did you realize that somebody stole 2 file cabinets full of meetings from the Conservation Commission and the Planning Board? Thousands of documents?
No.
Well, probably ought to know that, right?
When did this happen? 2 years ago? Oh, okay. Yeah, no idea.
Emptied out all the stuff on Stop and Shop, all environmental, all the prints, everything.
Oh, it's no fun.
Plus a whole bunch of other stuff.
Okay. Thanks for letting us know.
What are you gonna do about it?
What can I do about it?
I don't know, send a letter.
To whom?
Who would you like to send it to?
Who would you like me to send it to?
Mass Ethics Commission?
Okay. I'll take that under advisement.
I think, John, in all due respect, I think that would be a city issue, not a department issue, not an EDIC commission issue. I think that would be under the mayor's purview.
Yeah, I'm not sure there's anything we can do about it.
Yeah.
Or if it's truly stolen, as you say, it sounds like a police matter, you know?
Should.
Certainly does.
Was a police report filed?
Ask them.
Ask who?
Jamie.
Was a police report filed, do you know?
I don't know to what he's referring to, other than there have been allegations of this from going back to like 2004, is that right? This happened?
I just know I came into a meeting, and I was,
When was this?
oh, 2 months ago, a month ago. I believe it was, I forget which committee it was, the Conservation Commission. I was trying to make a point on something. I said, well, let me just pull out the environmental studies and this and that and the other thing, and there's nothing here. Which is, you know, who would it benefit?
You have to talk to the Conservation Commission, the city planner, but probably not the EDIC.
You know, and a lot of these projects in town that have been developed 10, 15 years ago.
Any issue with city clerk?
Yeah, I'm not sure that this is the appropriate place for that. I
Oh,
think probably
I
the
just
city
thought
clerk
it'd be,
or the
thought you might like to know.
Thank you, okay. I'm gonna continue on. We cannot approve minutes, but did anyone have any issues with the notes that I took from our last meeting? As I said, other than correcting the spelling of Denny. Okay, we cannot approve though. Planning Department report.
I don't have anything to report today.
Okay. Membership discussion. As you know, we have had a member who has not been here, oh, thank you, who has not been here for quite some time. And it is a member who we like, value having on the group. So I have taken steps, regrettably, taken steps to have that person no longer be part of the group. I have a letter. First of all, I have, if anyone is interested, I have printed out the communications that I have sent her. 2 emails, one on February 5th and one on the 11th. And there was another one on the 17th that I couldn't find my back, no. And then there were 2 Facebook personal messages I sent February 12th and February 19th. Of those 5 communications, I never heard back on any of them. And I know that the Facebook went to her because there were comments that she was making in Facebook. And I know the emails were good because you have, one was based on the email that you sent, so I just used that same address. This is my letter. I said, Susan, you have been a valued member of the Economic Development and Industrial Commission for a very long time. While your participation has brought great benefit to the group, your attendance has a great deal lacking. Because of the limited number of positions available in the group, it is vital that we have as complete a level of participation as possible for each of its members. As your other commitments have prevented you from attending most of the meetings this year, the group will be voting at our next meeting to remove you from the position of active member. If there are extenuating circumstances that have prevented you from taking a more active role in the EDIC, you are welcome to attend our next scheduled meeting on April 21st at 4 o'clock and present your case. This is not a step any of us take lightly, but one we all feel is necessary for the benefit of the committee. Are there things that anyone would like to have different in that letter? Or would you like to read it or look at it? Okay. And in my last communication, one of my communications, I did say, if timing is a problem, let us know what time would work, so we can discuss it. And I didn't hear back.
My only two, I have nothing with the letter, no, but beyond the letter, just kind of wondering with the catch-22, since this is not a official meeting, can we actually do this?
I don't think we can.
And
No.
secondly, even if we could, and I'm just questioning, I don't know, even if we could, can we, I don't know what the charter says about removing someone, I
Yeah.
forgot.
Yeah, we-
That-
The
that-
committee can do it, not the mayor?
Yeah.
Okay. No, I'll just put it, that's fine.
Yeah, we investigate if.
Yeah.
Basically, if someone misses three consecutive meetings, or all of the meetings held during 4 calendar months, or 1/2 or more of all the meetings in 1 calendar year, the remaining members of the multiple member body may, by a majority vote of their number, declare the office to be vacant, provided however the blah, blah,
No, I recall
proper
that
notice.
now.
So I'm not sure if, because it says by a majority vote of their number, if that means that this is outside of what's normally considered a quorum issue.
Sounds like it to me, and I think that would be, just me, I don't know if that's actually a fact, but it seems to me it would be prudent to have a majority vote of the number of people who actually are members, not just a minimum quorum who shows up.
But that's one of the same, I think, but we don't have a majority here. Majority would be 8, which is also a quorum.
Well, for instance, city council kind of handles these kinds of matters. They change how they vote on certain issues. And like this ordinance proposal, when that goes to a vote, there'll be a majority of city council, not a majority of the city council who is sitting at the time of the vote.
Correct.
So, I guess I'm saying the same thing.
Yeah.
Right.
So even if we have a quorum, and we vote and, we have the majority of the members vote positively or affirmatively, then that would satisfy that.
Yeah, that means though is the majority of the quorum.
No.
I can
Total
ask for
members.
clarification.
Well, first of all, I mean, I don't wanna belabor it, but whether it's majority or not, but if you're not in an official meeting, you can't do anything official.
No, I'm not talking about.
It's like being pregnant,
I'm
you are or not.
But-
One or the other.
But Dave-
Or dead,
but
you're
Dave-
dead or you're not dead.
But Dave, I think
Yeah.
what you described is one and the same. So a quorum here, for example, is 8. A majority is also 8.
Well, no, I'm
So it's
saying
one
if
the same.
there was 8 people, it could be 5 to 3.
No, but this is saying that a majority
No,
of a
Membership.
majority of the remaining members of the multi-member body, so.
Oh,
So this
okay.
is saying that.
It's
you
an
know,
effect- it's an
if-
effective quorum.
Right.
Well,
It's
so
an
this is a
effective-
majority of whoever's
A member.
appointed, not
Right.
a majority of the
Right.
total
Correct.
15.
Okay, I
so-
think we're all kind of. in
I'm not sure about what you just said, though. That's one, if it's a majority of those appointed, then it's a majority of the 15.
So the
No, because there
remaining-
haven't been 15 appointed.
the
Oh,
remaining
there are 15
members-
positions.
The remaining members of the multi-member body,
So if it's only a majority of,
the remaining members, so we have 8 remaining members, so it's a majority of that.
So
But I'm not
means
sure if that
5
has to happen during a
during a
quorum.
meeting.
Quorum
or-
meeting?
I would
during-
think it would,
Or,
yeah.
or not, so I will.
I would think.
I
I
will
would think
get
too,
some,
yes.
clarification.
But we do need to expedite. Josh, I know Josh spoke with the mayor about it at our last meeting, and she's working through some channels to find out about what it takes to legitimately reduce
Right.
the number. I mean, we haven't had 15 since
Maybe this is-
1776.
It is.
So if we can get it down to like, say, 10 as a number,
Yeah.
then it's much easier to.
Oh, do come closer.
You know, well, I raised the issue that we can't do anything officially, but that doesn't mean that I'm opposed to sending out a letter.
Well,
Because
I'm
that
not-
gives her a chance to respond,
That's true.
you know,
Okay.
it's like, maybe we might have to tweak it, maybe.
Can you do me a favor, since you are the one in the city? Can you find out if it's legitimate for us to even send a letter? I mean, I don't wanna
Yeah,
get in trouble,
okay.
but I think, even if she knew that we were having this discussion, that could change things.
Right.
But I mean, you know, these were pretty emphatic. I mean, I was polite, but I said, we need to hear from you.
Well, I texted her husband twice about getting in contact, I didn't hear back from him, I'm surprised.
Really?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, well,
But to your point, we could send a letter reminding her of the guidelines and the ramifications of not meeting those guidelines. Just take out the part that says we voted on anything.
that's true.
So here's what's required, here's the benchmark you haven't reached. Therefore, you're going to leave us no alternative in a future meeting
To take this
to
direction.
take this action or whatever.
That's kind of what I said.
But you just take out the word voting.
Right.
You said we'll be voting at our meeting.
Take action. Okay, take it
We've
up.
taken the action.
Just
we
Yeah.
because we
okay.
can't, right in here, you said
Yeah.
the group will be voting.
Yeah,
at our
we'll be
next
taking
meeting.
action.
We'll be taking action, you could say.
We can never restore a quorum.
I know.
Any progress on?
Yeah, I was gonna say, since
getting
we're
a
having
member released?
a membership discussion, has there been any luck in that direction?
Jack is still researching it, and I've been talking to him at least once or twice a week. He's working on it. He's working on another request too, but I have him working on quite a few things right now that are, I think that are probably taking up a lot of his time.
Okay.
So, but it isn't on the back burner, and he hasn't forgotten.
Okay,
Okay,
then, thank you.
no problem. I'm sorry.
That's not
It's
your
just
fault.
once in a while I overload him.
Well, since we are still having a membership discussion, I have a challenge. I want each of us to see if we can go out and find one person that we can at least get interested. And I'll be frank, yes.
I've done
You've done it?
it. Yes.
Yay! So any idea when it will be effective?
Her dad is not doing well right now, so I think it might be by next month, maybe the following. But she will be taking my spot. She will be representing ECA on the
Okay.
EDIC, and she will actually become a member.
Well, so have you been made a member of this? No, okay. Okay, but she would be, that you would take that spot, okay,
Yeah.
okay. Has she sent a note to the mayor yet?
No.
No.
Okay, okay. Well, everyone else, let's see if we can find, darn, you were gonna be my one.
And I think I did tell you, Josh, I did receive, one person interested, and I wanted to, I thought that maybe we should hold any interested applicants until we find out what we're doing with, with what Jack's working on.
I would still, I wouldn't wanna hold them because we could still take in people and not reach the new clip levels, I don't think. The new clip levels are 10, and the most we have the potential to have now is 7, and that's with Susan. So I would probably ask that we not hold.
Okay.
Proceed with anyone we can.
Yeah, because was there a specific number we were asking him to reduce it to?
Yes.
Yes.
We were asking to reduce the IFA from 5 to 3, and the DIC from 10 to 7.
So that would
10
be,
overall.
so if I put somebody forward, that's your 7, but you're asking people to get
Well, no,
some
right
membership.
now, we are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Perhaps if we can get a quorum, becoming 7. The old, Mike is not here, Michael's not here, Burley, and then Susan. And,
But are we also looking into not having the IFA?
Yeah, I have a question about that as well.
Yes.
Something came up about possibly the IFA being a subcommittee of or part of the group of
This-
we're called the EDIC.
I think I can answer some of this for you. This is why it wasn't a quick thing. Remember when we at first thought this was going to be a quick? This is why it wasn't. You can't change things without finding out how they were formatted. So thanks to Jamie did a lot of research on how things were formatted, and, you know, what was accepted, when they became a committee, and that's what Jack's working on now, where you would go from there to make changes to it. So it became involved.
It's just when the conversation goes to, you know, the number being 10, as 10 members of the EDIC, then but that means this group and then the IFA at the same time. So to me, in my mind, it just seems like for one group,
Yeah.
then the people on the IFA ought to be members of the.
That's where it wasn't clear, correct, Jamie? At one time, it was 10,
Yeah.
the thought was 5 finance and 10 industrial development, which made a total of 15. But then it's unclear, are the 5, but the 5 are also part of it. So that was the understanding, that it was a total of 15, 10 and 5.
Right.
Which we know Tom is the only one on finance, and then that would also be members, would still be members. So our question is, does it make it 15 or is it 10 and 5? But they're separate. But the way committees are formed, there's very different regulations and responsibilities, and that's why soon as Jamie and I saw all that, it's like, okay, I provided everything to Jack.
But my understanding was, as you just said, Karen, that there were 15 members of EDIC. 5 of them were designated as this financing authority, so they could go out and secure financing if they needed to as a separate entity within EDIC. So they just simply had another label, but it was part of the 15, was my understanding.
Right.
But that was, different era.
But-
selectmen.
I agree.
And the only reason I brought it up was if based upon Jack's report, I would recommend that we go for 9, not 10,
Right. And eliminate the,
IFA.
right.
Right.
Because that was a
Depending on
different
the
time and
report.
place.
We don't need the IFA
No.
to be part of this. We don't.
Excuse me?
We need the IFA to be
No.
part of this.
Not
No,
yet.
and it hasn't been functioning, as Tom knows, in a long, long time, because he's been the sole member, and so that's where we were going with that. I mean, I'm gonna see Jack tomorrow morning again, so if you want me to change the recommendation to look at just how do we go about dissolving the industrial finance, and then just changing the EDIC to 9,
9.
I have no problems doing that, I'm writing it down.
Well, you kind of like an uneven number, so it's 9 or 11, 9 or 11. I mean, 11 wouldn't hurt us. 11 wouldn't
Yeah,
hurt.
I say let's make it 11.
I wanna say 7.
No.
11 wouldn't hurt, because you'd still only need 6 for a quorum.
Okay.
So 11 wouldn't hurt.
Okay.
And to okay, I'm
But the
sorry.
IFA was created at a time
So-
when that was a financing vehicle, long before there were other financing vehicles available to the city
That's
that
very
are
correct.
available today.
That's correct.
So we're shooting for a total of 9?
So,
So 9, yes.
Josh, 9?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll tell Jack that tomorrow.
You all know that in the last 2 or 3 meetings, and it's not just because of the importance of the zoning ordinance, in the last 2 or 3 meetings, we've got a spark. And I think this is the way it's gonna be from now on.
I think so.
The days of us floundering are beyond us now. And I think when each of us goes and talks to potential members, we have to have that excitement in our voice.
Mm.
And in that way, because of that thought, I feel more comfortable saying 9 instead of 7. So, and get people who are different than us, Well, the more diversity we have in here, I think the more effective we can be.
Well, I agree. However, what do we tell people that we do? What do we do? Do we work on the mission? I thought that was still part of
That
what we were working on.
We're still dealing with that, but I think our main goal is to try and promote the economic viability of Easthampton.
That's right.
Okay.
Yep.
That's it in a nutshell.
In a nutshell,
Mhm.
promote the economic viability of Easthampton.
And excuse me, I don't mean to interrupt, but, and be an advisory to me,
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, then that's a part of it.
I mean, I don't have an economic development
Yeah.
person.
We are an advisory arm to the mayor and the planning board. Right, okay. Cool, okay, so, I will send a letter to Susan just saying this is important, and we've taken the word voting out. And so it's not necessarily having to be for quorum. Thank you all. Now, the square footage building zoning ordinance, obviously, we're still not a quorum, so we cannot make a recommendation. I think what we can do, though, is continue to have discussions, and then individually attend meetings and speak, say what we feel about this, but we can't do it as a group. I don't think we can, because we haven't had a quorum to be able to make it official.
Well, what's interesting, well, we can talk about it now
Yeah.
here, even though we don't have a quorum.
Right. Oh, no, I want to, that's, it's.
Okay,
yeah,
great,
yeah.
okay.
I'm just saying, but, I mean, for anyone who was worried that we were gonna try and do something that
Right.
that would not be legitimate, I'm not
Well,
pushing for that.
Yeah, I mean, but even from timing, I know at the public hearing, Salem, made it known that he was looking for a recommendation. And I guess, I don't know when they're meeting next on this tonight. Obviously, we're not gonna, meet that deadline, but I'm hopeful we can have a recommendation
not ordinance.
that might meet
Just the
the
planning.
council, the full council. That's still probably 2 months away.
Hopefully.
You know,
I mean, a lot of that depends on,
Oh, I know, we have
yeah.
Jack in membership, but, I guess I'm just saying, I wouldn't give up on that just yet. If we have discussions now, maybe the day we have a recommendation, it'd be a 5-minute conversation, I don't know. We'll have passed it through pretty good.
Yeah.
No, otherwise, I'm game for where you're going.
Okay, so to start things, I mean, from what I understand, it seems like both parties, both sides are much more in agreement than we thought, given the recommendations that the planning commission, that Jessica was making. Sorry, I'm kind of tongue-tied. Because you said this at the meeting the other night, that you'd be happy, you'd be entertaining the things that Jessica said. So, I don't think, they have not changed the recommendations that Jessica has made. She's just made them a little bit more detailed, from what I understand. But,
Well, she has, because I thought there was
You're right,
confusion.
I'm sorry, the planning board is not dealing with this at tonight's meeting, the building side stuff.
Oh,
well, they're not, okay.
They're not doing.
no, but Salem, the ordinance committee is the one I was referring to. I don't know when they're meeting, but he was hopeful that we'd have a recommendation.
Unfortunately, we just can't.
Yeah. No.
We can't. As individuals, we can. Each of us can as an individual.
The only,
As a body, we cannot.
as far as, unless she's tweaked it, as far as Jessica's recommendations, I think there was, some, confusion or misconception, if I can find her language, with the 80,000 square feet.
On the applicant.
I think some people thought that she was recommending an aggregate of 80,000 square feet, and I think she was recommending 80,000 square feet for a single use. Well, I can't, of course.
Here's the little paragraph in the minutes from
Okay, so-
January.
Because that's what she mentioned to me. No, I didn't hear
You
no.
need to know.
Well, let's look
I
at
can answer that.
Yeah.
So the,
It was 80 in the end, not 50 or something.
right, but so in her original letter, what she was saying was that in surrounding communities, one of the surrounding communities, there's an aggregate of 80,000 square feet.
That's right, the example.
And her recommendation is to increase the aggregate square footage from what was proposed, not necessarily to the 80,000, but just saying that the 80,000 was an example of what a neighboring community has,
Thank you, that's what she told me.
has
That's what she
come up
told me.
with. And I think that, she, there is, she's has a new memo to the planning board, to look at some of these, pieces and more specifically, and she was, in that memo, she says that, she does not support an aggregate amount, period. So,
So meaning that if
No, it's
individual
okay.
retailers went on a site, whatever the aggregate was, she's not recommending or supporting any aggregate number.
right, because that aggregate number is typically determined by the lot size or the acreage of the
Yep.
the property. So
So there's a limitation in place
There's a
already.
limitation by the size of the property,
Yep.
or by the size of how many parcels you can
Yep.
put together.
So if the acreage allowed, I'm just throwing out an example, Jamie, if the acreage allowed, and a proposal said that you couldn't have an individual retailer greater than 50,000 square feet, there could be 5 of those on one single property if the acreage allowed.
50,000 square.
50,000 square foot buildings totaling 250,000 in the aggregate, if the acreage allowed.
Right, if there's no aggregate limit, which
Right.
is what Jessica's recommending.
Right, okay, good.
But I mean, the acreage would have to
Allow
allow
for
that.
it. Correct, that's
Now,
my point.
am I correct in assuming that as long as one of the tenants is less than 50,000 square feet, the building might be 62,000 square feet, that would be all right? Is that, am I?
Depending on what the number came up to,
Well,
John.
depending whose proposal you're talking about.
Right, if the proposal came out to say, let's just do a hypothetical. If the proposal said no one retailer can be greater than 50,000,
One retailer.
if there was no aggregate limit, there could be 50,000 if the acreage allowed. There's another requirement that says only so much square footage can go on a site based on acreage.
Correct.
So if you had a 250,000 acre property, I'm sorry, that's wrong. If you had
Square footage
a square
allowed.
footage,
Bigger than.
if you had a large, sorry, Dave, I mixed it up, square footage is acreage. If you had a large enough parcel, you could put 50,000 square foot pads on that site.
But you
If
could
the
not
acreage
have one
was-
As long as you had different stores in there.
Correct,
But you cannot have one that would be 60.
correct,
Could it have one single building larger than 50,000 square feet?
right.
So our building that was approved at 53,000 square feet is non-conforming.
Well, no, it's already approved.
It's approved,
If it's approved, then
it's
it's fine.
pre-existing,
Pre-existing.
or it's permitted under pre-existing, it's permitted under a previous version of the ordinance, and as long as that permit is still valid, it could be built, but once that permit expires,
Then you're done.
then you would have to get,
They'd have to cut 3,000 square
yeah,
feet
you
somewhere.
would have to change it.
If it's not built by the time the permit expires.
I just think that,
Construction's not
just
started.
sorry to interrupt, I know you've said, John, it's 53, I think though, that at least all the reports I've seen, what I remember is I believe it's under 50 already, in fact, that's, you know,
The
so we should
store
check
is-
that.
The
We should-
store is under 50. Unfortunately, did you know, Karen, that they stole
Oh, you know what?
2 cabinets?
I'm sorry to do this, but we're on a limited time. And it's something that we can't really do anything about in this meeting. I gotta ask that we not do it. And it's all, we've got the recording that you did bring it up, and so it will be in there. But talk to the mayor after. I'm sorry.
Well, where I was wondering is, so now Jessica has some new recommendations, which is fine, and I think I'll get a copy.
New or more detailed?
More
Oh,
detail.
right.
Can we get copy? Is that
Yeah,
something
I
we
can,
see, or-
yeah, I can forward it to everyone.
And then, since they're just more detailed, I was just wanting to know if we wanted to take a step back, and not necessarily, get into the meat, and just see what the flavor is, if the, committee likes it at superficially at first glance. I mean, I got the impression that this is gonna be thrown back into planning, and there'll be plenty of time to hash out, details. And I'm just throwing this out, and, does this present members wanna just give a recommendation, or they wanna wait and dig into it? I'm asking.
I mean, I think each of us could say our opinion,
Uh-huh.
but we can't give a recommendation.
No, I realize that.
We can't even do anything that could be construed as giving a recommendation.
No, right, but I guess at some point in time, we're lucky enough to have a quorum. Would we wanna give a recommendation? I'm just asking for the flavor
Oh,
of the
yeah, yeah.
people. Would we wanna give a recommendation that, yay or nay, or points A, B, and C are awesome, points D or F stink? I mean, I'm just,
Format, you're thinking?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, when I was talking to Jamie earlier before the meeting, and I was thinking, ideally, because Jessica's done such good work, ideally, I could see 3 scenarios. Either we love it, or we hate it, or we love it with Jessica's recommendations.
Okay, that's what I'm kind of getting.
And I'm not sure, I mean, I don't think any of us have the bandwidth to really start to pick apart Jessica's recommendations and saying, this is good, this isn't, this is good, this isn't.
And I just question too, Dave, whether or not are her suggestions or recommendations presented in their entirety, or can you pick and choose? I wonder if it's like, here's the package, and you either up yay or nay on the package, because if we start picking it apart, now her recommendation isn't what it was, and now the planning board might start all over with that.
And then she does this for a living, so
No, that's fine.
as far as I'm concerned,
Because where I'm going with this is, you know, as a the EDIC board member, I prefer to defer to the planning department. But I am very, very concerned about the message that this sends. And that's the kind of level I like to talk about it at, you know.
The message of what's, the recommendation itself, or the
The proposal.
Yeah.
oh, to potential businesses coming in these.
Right,
Yes.
and there's two kind of issues, and, you know, I would rather defer to Jessica and the planning department for as far as details, but, I'm just throwing out my 3 cents.
I mean, if I were to be asked, Josh Rosenblatt, what do you feel about it? I would say, I would be in favor of it if Jessica's edits were enacted in it. If Jessica's recommendations were part of it, I'd be in favor of it. But as it was written, I would not be in favor of it. And, you know, that's part of there are many reasons. One of them is that I'm not happy with the potential message it sends to new businesses. But then again, on the other side of the coin, I really appreciate the intent that it was first come up with. Because I don't want any big box stores in here any more than anyone else.
Good, that's a perfect segue, because I've heard in the discussion, you know, the public discussion on this so far, one thing that's been said is that the proposal would not prevent big box development or big box stores, but would potentially limit other types of businesses. So, to me, that's a challenging statement based on the definition of what a big box store is. The prevailing definition for a big box store, and it also goes to where the proposal came from. Where did 50,000 feet come from? Where did that come from? It was not an arbitrary, that's another thing I've heard, that it was an arbitrary limit or an arbitrary size. Not for me, it wasn't. It was, a lot of thought went into it. And one of the pieces of that is that the prevailing definition of big box store is a store that's greater than 50,000 square feet. It's also, appearance-wise, a big box store is literally a box. The method of construction that's used is substandard to other types of construction. This leads to a lot of other problems concerning taxes. One of the things that, of course, the interest in having, attracting business, you know, what's the message that, you know, potential businesses that want to move here, what are they getting? Well, that we would never know unless we conducted an absolute survey on that. One of the messages it sends, as far as I'm concerned, if I were wanted to locate in Easthampton and I wanted to do a clothing store of 20,000 square feet, which would be pretty sizable, I might balk at that if I knew that the door was wide open for anybody like a big box to move in and put me out of business, because all of the studies show, and I would challenge anybody to find a study, and I've read numerous ones, numerous studies that show again and again and again that when a big box development moves into a town, there's a steady decline of all the local businesses, aside from the fact, and I also heard that big boxes can be viewed as anchors to attract business. However, going back to the definition of big box stores, 50,000 square feet is pretty large. That's a large store. Things beyond 50,000 square feet, what are these stores? Who are they? And they, again, I've read so many of the studies. I brought some actually condensed versions of some of these, like the findings from these studies, and I would be happy to give anybody interested a link to a place that is a trove of all these studies. These are not things based on anecdotal evidence or feelings, how people feel it might turn out. These are scientific studies on what actually happens when a big box development moves into a community.
And Dave, those may play out over time, and I think if we allow enough time to play out, we can prove anything right or wrong if we wait long enough. But I'm not sure those statistics have held true in our immediate market. So Chicopee, the Eastfield Mall was a dying mall. Fairfield Mall, I'm sorry, Fairfield Mall, dead, dying mall. Knocked it down, put in the development today. Walmart went in on one end, Home Depot went out on the other end. A variety of smaller stores went in, and then another variety of smaller stores, Panera Bread, Dollar Store, AT&T. That place is more vibrant today than it ever was in the hustle and bustle of Memorial Drive. So I'm trying to think of where Walmarts are in our market. Westfield, revived that whole area in Westfield. Hadley's probably a better example. Mount Farms Mall was dead,
for
a
years.
dead mall, brick and mortar, ready to fall down. Walmart went in as the anchor, and now, you know, Whole Foods, Panera Bread again, a couple of banks in that plaza, pad sites, a couple of automotive, and then by extension, they have in fact helped to revive the old Hampshire Mall just down the road, and now across the street's beginning to develop the whole Home Depot plaza. Again, restaurants going in there and other businesses going in. So that statistic, scientific proof may be true nationally, but at least today, and Walmart's been in those 3 locations for quite some time now, 20 years from now, those businesses start failing and someone might say, see, I told you Walmart would put them out. That may be true, but it's not true in our geographic region today. It still amazes me that you can drive 20 minutes in any direction and hit 4 Walmarts. It still amazes me how they survive. But that particular statistic, you know, in the smaller version in Northampton, you know, a dead empty store, the old Haldors, dead empty store. Walmart went in, revived it. Job Lots came in next door. Big Lots, I'm sorry, came in next door. Sleepy's came in front of it. Jiffy, all that whole plaza behind Big Y developed. Businesses in downtown Northampton, a couple have gone out recently, but I think for reasons that no one could draw a line to Walmart. So I don't know that argument would, in other words, if Walmart went in, I don't see Manchester's going out of business.
Well, one thing though is that the character, this may not be, I think you're there, the character of Route 9 in Hadley is like Rockville Pike in Rockville, Maryland, or like a town in Houston. There's nothing unique about Route 9 in Hadley.
There is one unique thing. You know, even Timothy Brennan, the head of Pioneer Valley Planning Commission, said the same thing you said. And he lives in Hadley. He said he's embarrassed by Route 9. And you're right, Route 9 is like any place. But the rest of Hadley is like Hadley was 20 years ago. That was a trade-off they made. That
So they're getting those tax dollars.
yeah, we'll keep it here so we can be green everywhere else.
Well, it's not that green, but.
Well, the farms.
Well, if you got parachuted in 300 yards, 200 yards to left or right of Route 9, you'd think you were in Vermont somewhere. It's
Well, see,
very
But it's-
pastoral,
but see,
very rural.
that's just saying the farmland has been preserved. I mean, there's a lot of unique stuff that's not farms in Easthampton.
Well, right, but I think it gets back to 2 things. If we talk about a big box store, a single retailer, I think we can contain our conversation. But if we use the term big box development, now we're slipping a little bit. Now, the Walmart in Northampton is interesting. Everyone thought they were gonna buy Big Lots and take that over. They can't. Big Y owns that plaza. That Walmart will get a little bit bigger. I think we're 5,000 or 10,000 square feet. It will never become, because Big Y wants to sell groceries. Big Y is not gonna let them have. So you have, the aggregate is over 100,000 square feet. I forget what that Caldors used to be. I wanna say 38,000 square feet. I don't know. The point being is, if we wanna pick on the big bad box, because they're, you know, no one likes them. even though they're more effective than Congress in raising their minimum wage. Well,
Yeah, but see,
Well, they
this
just did it.
it's not
Yeah, they just
necessarily,
did.
you know, it's not necessarily the big box, you know, you look at the example of Chicopee, that Tom was saying, and all the small businesses that he was citing
Yeah.
that came in, those are all national chains. I mean, Panera is a national chain, AT&T is a national chain, and there's nothing unique to the character of Chicopee there now. Yeah, there are some small stores, but there's nothing unique to Chicopee.
You know what's also interesting about this conversation, and when I talk to folks within the community, it's interesting the perception of what that definition of big box is. And it's not necessarily square footage, which obviously that's huge, but people will say to me, you know, Walmart is the big Death Star and it's the big evil one, but yet in the same breath they say, well, what we need is Trader Joe's. And really, it's
Yeah.
perception is, I mean, it's
That's
the
true.
same thing.
I was
It's just
gonna-
a different perception, and that one's a little bit more acceptable than evil.
Yeah, I was gonna jump in when Dave mentioned big box, and I think it's perception versus reality. So if you had a 48,000, and this is just hypothetical to make the point, if you had a 48,000 square foot big Walmart and a 48,000 square foot Home Depot and a 48,000 square foot Lowe's come to Easthampton, people would tell you big box has invaded Easthampton.
Yep.
They wouldn't care if it was 48 or 60, big boxes come to
Right, it's
Easthampton.
perception.
And it would have this, and I think the point I made at the last meeting, David, my humble opinion, it would have the same impact as, I don't care if it's a 48,000 square foot Walmart or it's 80,000 square foot Walmart, it'll have the same detrimental impact, potential detrimental impact on your downtown businesses.
So then after this is all
Square
said and
footage
done,
won't define it.
so after this is all said and done, I think we need to find another way to try and keep
I want
So
to,
can I,
national.
just to put this out there, and this is sort of taking it back a little bit to looking at the format of what the EDAC's proposal might be. But it sounds like what I'm hearing is explorations about some of the negative impacts of the big box store that aren't necessarily dealt with in a zoning way. And what this ordinance that's going before the planning board and the city council ordinance committee right now is looking at zoning and the ways that zoning can regulate big box stores. But I guess I would challenge the EDAC to sort of broaden that and sort of look at maybe other ways that, other ways that the city can deal with some of these negative impacts, and maybe making that part of the recommendation, rather than just saying yes or no, or we agree with the planning department. You know, if the question is about character of, you know, Route 9 or Route 10, or, you know, then maybe there's recommendations for design review boards or ways of building these buildings so they're not just one flat floor, maybe they go up. If there's questions about wage, you know, minimum wage, I don't know how that would be dealt with, but maybe there's ways that people can think of that the city has and the powers to regulate it, that would deal with more of the negative impacts than just the size of the building.
I think she has a good point, though. I think we need to stay on task.
But just what strikes me with that, though, Jamie, with all due respect, what strikes me with that is that we're operating or thinking contrary to our mission. So we're trying to find ways to keep certain businesses out rather than being proactive and receptive to new business coming to town. We're saying, we want you to come to Easthampton, but you're gonna come on these particular terms. And
But I mean, I think that's.
you can win the battle and lose the war on that
See,
one.
Sure, but I do think
perceive
that
that at all.
I mean,
I don't.
the Easthampton Economic Development Corporation, Commission is, task is to not just promote, I mean, my opinion is not just economic development at the sake for economic growth or, you know, just to get everyone wealthy, but it's to preserve some essential characters or to benefit the community that's here. So I don't think every business, I mean, and this is a question for the EDIC, is every business equal? Is every,
Sure.
you know, and if that's the case, then you don't know, then you don't wanna stop anything and you wanna give free market, just let everyone do whatever they want to their property.
Well, no, absolutely not let everyone do what they want. I mean, God, between zoning and planning and site plan review and building inspector and all, there's so many things in place today that control what comes in. It just feels to me like here, oh, let's pile on a few more, and maybe we'll seem to be more receptive to business. We'll just pile on a couple more. I don't. Dave mentioned a couple times, if you wanted to open a clothing store, you might feel more protected. Who's lining up to open a clothing store? They don't. That small model, unfortunately, doesn't work. That's why no one's opening one, because the community won't support it. Now, when I was growing up in this town in the 60s and 70s, nobody drove anywhere. All those people in the mills got out of work and went shopping. Lasatte's men's store was doing fine for 30 years. But it didn't work once people became mobile and found out the world doesn't end on the other side of the mountain. And so they drove, my God, they drove to Holyoke, they drove to Springfield, they drove to the outlet stores in Lee, Maine, and what's the other one on 495? Rentham. So that's what killed, I think, not killed, because it's still alive, that's what hurt our downtown structure that we all grew up with, knew and loved, is the mobility of society, I believe.
Well, you have a very interesting point, because people are going to get in their car regardless of what is here or what's not here, and drive away. So that's another good question to ask, do we want them to
But
drive
if
away?
they don't have to drive away, they won't. Like, why does Big E's supermarket, why did that survive? Every time I go there, it's full of people, and I go there pretty frequently. A lot of people walk there because it's downtown, it's convenient, it's large enough.
But when I go, I can't find a parking
I
place.
did want to bring up
But there's a
another
big Y, that's only
point.
what, 3 miles down the road?
Right.
It's not that far.
Right, so people go there too.
They have a choice, yeah.
And
Because
then-
our
I
forefathers
think
decided
that's-
not to have it here.
I'm sorry?
Yes.
But there is a,
Decided they didn't want it here.
something else that's
Over the line.
on the table to consider, I think, because it keeps coming up, is that, well, Easthampton doesn't have, I've heard it said over and over now, David, you could probably speak more strongly to this, but I don't know how many acres really are available for development in Easthampton. Easthampton's fairly small, I think it's 13.5 square miles. So we don't have a lot, and so that came out in the master plan as well, like really paying attention to how we use things to maximize. We want to increase the tax base so we can, throw some of this undeveloped land in the taxable, increase the taxes on it, pay for our schools, and all these wonderful things. We have a limited supply of land to develop. Again, studies on big box development show, and this is indisputable. Tom and I know you keep talking about things that are like, it's anecdotal, your assessment of the situation. These are studies done by firms that have been hired, paid tens of thousands of dollars for interested parties to find out how to more wisely plan. And the studies come up again and again. Big box development returns the lowest amount per ratio of square footage to a community. And in some communities, it's a loss. It's a loss to the community for all kinds of reasons. Policing is more intense. Local stores, smaller operations in general. Somebody writes a bad check, they usually take it up with the person. Happens at a Walmart or something like this, they call the police. There's study after study. I'd be happy to give you links to all of these things. Now, these things cost money, to buy the studies, because a lot of money went into it. If we want to, for instance, fast food is the biggest drain on infrastructure with the smallest tax return to the community. So it's a money loser. That tops the list of money losers in any community. But you could say, well, fast food is something people want, drive in, drive out. Retail establishments up to around 30,000 feet are pretty good. Business offices are one of the best, actually. Not a lot of traffic, people go there, they go to the office, at the end of the day they go home. So you don't have people coming and going all the time. You don't have that issue. But the way Easthampton assesses its taxes is on the value of the structure, not the value of the business. Now, some across the country, like in Ohio, they tax the value of the business. So there, a fast food restaurant, if it's really popping, is it's a really hot operation, that might be an asset to the community in terms of positive cash flow, as opposed to expenditures on infrastructure, police, and all this kind of stuff. Easthampton, that's not true. In most of Western Mass, that is not true. You know, we don't have a local income tax, so if we had businesses and employed people, the local income tax would stay locally, as it did in San Diego where I lived. That was big. Retail was big, create jobs, more money, not just your assessed value of the property, and they had a value tax on the business. So you have greater incentive, and in that scenario, it doesn't matter how big the business is. The big box stores, again, they're so big and they're such substandard construction, really. They are literally big boxes. The value of that structure is not as great as the value of a really well-built, well-designed, attractive building. Therefore, the assessed value of big box stores, under the way we assess property, would be less per square foot, per size of structure, per everything. So now we're giving away land. We want maximum return on the land, tax-wise, but you're still wanting to leave the door open to, you know, development that creates less income.
I'm just not sure what the difference would be between, with what you just said. 50,000 yay, 55 no. What's the difference?
Well, you know,
5,000 square feet.
I'm gonna stop here, just because we could go back and forth on this a lot, and we have, and a lot of this has been said, and it's good, it's viable stuff, but right now, we have 7 minutes left, and there's one more thing we need to talk about. Did you have one pressing thing on this
Nope.
stuff? Okay. So real quickly, to close this up, obviously we can't make a recommendation today. I will wait to hear from the mayor how our membership works, and our next meeting, our next meeting is February, April 21st. I may see if we can try and meet one time in between, both for this, but also, one other thing on the agenda is this cleanup day, the annual cleanup day. Are we gonna do that this year? I think we should, but we only have one more meeting before then.
Well, we better. We got money from Williston to
Yeah.
buy mulch, so we
Yeah.
have to do
So,
the right thing by them, right?
Yeah, for the
Well-
most, we'll have to plan it.
That's too Kevin's baby.
I know.
And Eric's not here, so you're gonna have to get up to speed pretty quick.
Yeah, and I'll work with you on that.
Jamie, what's the proposed timeline on the boardwalk promenade finish date? June
The
something?
grant has to be expended by July 1st, June 31st, so,
Yeah.
after cleanup.
So a big ton of that mulch isn't gonna be used anymore, that went around the pond.
Well, then we can put it in other places.
Yeah.
I always thought there were more places around the center circle
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
okay, so it's possible that I may, if we did try and meet next Tuesday, could we? And try and devote more time to.
Sure cannot.
No, okay.
I can't.
And
I don't
you're
know.
out too.
Well, then,
I may try and see if I can do one before, April 21st,
Sure.
so we can put this thing together.
Just so it, Barbara was trying to get the bike path committee, with their cleanup, for May 2nd, which is the first Saturday in May.
Who?
That's typically the date.
The May 2nd.
Is who that, what group
Oh.
is that?
The bike path committee. It's
And they have their own group that does that?
Yeah, so Barbara Lombard is the city clerk.
They typically do.
they take our mulch and then they do
Well,
their
they-
little
they-
section.
oh, yeah,
No, they
they have their own mulch.
They just do it. Well,
They have their own.
They
And
use
the
it
past-
on
the
a mural,
past couple of
they
years,
mulch all
they-
the
You
time.
have to kind of an outline. Does that still exist, what we used last year, to kind of show who was involved doing what tasks?
I would
and things
think
like that?
Eric should have some of that stuff. Are you able to be in touch with him?
Who?
Eric?
No.
well, it'd be at the chamber anyway.
But
But I
Should
can,
be
I
in
can look
files.
for whatever we have.
Okay.
I'll see if I can find it in my records.
Yeah.
We have a,
I have quantities from what we did last year, but in terms of how they broke down, I actually do have the chart.
For some reason, I have this
yeah, the chart. That's what I was
feeling
talking about,
that,
yeah.
this feeling that there was a lot more, coordination going on with this group as opposed to the chamber necessarily.
That's correct, the
Right?
chamber, that's absolutely right. The chamber simply became sort of
It's like the
headquarters.
hub,
Yeah,
yeah.
You have to have John's copy.
I think
Yeah.
the chamber, there was a task list that Eric organized, he organized volunteers for the day, and I
People showed up, you
believe
could,
there's
you weren't
a,
Can you give that to Rose?
there's a supply closet somewhere with a bunch of,
Oh, excellent, downstairs.
And I'll
I don't know,
help
fit
you.
tools in there and some plastic
Rakes,
bags.
brooms,
And so-
paper
It's all in
bags.
the basement. Rooms, rakes.
So all y'all will be there
Yeah,
that day?
yeah. And we would typically,
I'm
so,
gonna be standing there with my file of rakes
you know,
here.
a couple would show up with two little kids and said, you know, where can we go, what can we do? And you just kind of a task like rake this or hand them some rakes and let them do this
So
thing.
then we get these scout groups that can help too.
Well, chambers typically supply the bagel and refreshments right there.
Ham and eggs.
Possibly here.
Sometimes it's fresh.
Shashian,
I
yeah.
haven't done that in years, but the honor society, the key clubs,
Like for, yes.
yeah, you talk to the
Yeah,
honor
and
society.
I will see
The
if
biggest thing is getting the word out, because, you know, as soon as you do those flyers, and just get them out. Get the word out on the date, I think May 2nd,
If somebody
typically
can
the
put
first
together
Saturday.
a public service thing, we can put it on the
Yes,
ECA
I will do
site,
that.
ask the members.
And then it's just word of mouth, and people showed up, and we signed them tasks. Pretty simple, you work with as many
Who came
people,
up with the tasks?
they're right there,
Oh, they're here right now.
they're all there.
And I think you can, be honestly, you could probably, the Rod and Gun Club always kind of took, territorial, purvey of the pond, but between them and the boardwalk, you can take the pond off the list probably.
Yeah, take the pond right
Yeah,
off.
definitely
so-
the pond off. And last
And
year.
then, and then also,
Absolutely.
excuse me, but across the street, Riverside, and people would help out with the hill in front of the dye works. But now that's a construction zone.
Right.
So,
Yeah, that should be off the list.
Yeah.
What is that?
It probably,
So is that,
That'd be on Cottage Street.
Union?
It's like 1 to
Cottage
15.
Union at along Nashawana Pond, that's all. So the whole Nashawana Pond thing would be right.
off, yep.
Well, the part that's on Cottage and Williston
Well,
would
there's
be, would be off. but-
Nashawana Pond Banks cleanup, there's
Across the street would be too, though.
Nashawana, and there's Cottage
That's-
and
like
Union
Dave
along
said, that's all
Nashawana
construction
Pond.
site today.
I'm not sure how far, you know, because there's the cemetery and then, I don't know how far.
well, the Rod and Gun
where-
Club would
where
go up
someone-
into the cemetery a little bit where, there's
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
deck.
But all they were doing there was blowing all the stuff into the pond. We don't
Into
want
the
that
pond.
again. We don't want that again.
So maybe they would volunteer to do something else.
Yes,
I think where you could really use some focus is the parking lot on Cottage Street.
yeah.
Mhm.
Typically needs a lot of help.
There's gonna be, and there's gonna be a lot of trash on the street once all the snow melts.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, that's true.
The sand and coordinating with.
That's assuming it's melted by May 2nd.
Yeah, right.
That's a good,
Okay.
I would,
There was some
Better
arrangement
cup of coffee.
last year with doing it so that the street sweepers would
Yes.
come by after. the event.
I did that, I arranged it with the mayor. I'll do that again.
At a minimum, Dave, they came by on Monday morning, early
Yeah.
Monday morning.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And then James Zarvis
James Zarvis,
has
yeah.
been
Our trash collector.
pulling the trailer around to take bags to the transfer station.
Yeah. And I'll check with them again.
that, we may, I think last year they ended up here.
No.
We took care of it though.
We took it down at the town yard.
Yeah.
Because I
Okay.
remember we
The
had
mulch
this,
was dumped here last year.
the mulch was
Yes,
dumped here.
that'll probably make the case good. I'm gonna close this meeting. So be watchful for another email from me if I try and arrange another meeting. Please respond back as to your availability. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So anyone that hasn't bought a